Robert Rogers, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you very much.
Robert has been a student of plant medicine for over 40 years. He is a professional member of the American Herbalist Guild and author of over 40 books on medicinal plants of Western Canada. Robert has a bachelor's degree in botany. He has taught plant medicine for over 20 years and is an avid fan of our indigenous plants and mushrooms. Robert, I get this asked of me for some reason quite a bit because people know I'm into the mushrooms, and I have friends who suffer with the illness. Can mushrooms treat or cure cancer?
Well, the evidence shows that in clinical trials, some species of mushrooms absolutely can assist the body in bringing the immune system to optimal balance, and Reishi, of course, is one of them.
Well, what is a Reishi mushroom? I see that they're in the stores. Are the ones in the stores better, or should I be getting them wild from the parks?
Well, that's a great question. You're talking to an individual who loves to harvest his own mushrooms. I collect the Ganoderma applanatum of Alberta. We don't have any Ganoderma sugae, the British Columbia reishi. We don't really have that this side of the mountains, but every time I get out to your way, I scour the woods and find new fresh ones, and I make my own medicines from those. So my preferred is always to make your own when you have the opportunity.
Give me an example of how you would do that. Pick the mushroom and then what do? Do you boil it? Do you dry it into a powder?
I can give you an exact, my favorite recipe. It's not going to be everybody's, but this is how it goes for me. You take your freshly found, juicy reishi mushroom and take it home and slice it up thinly. If it's very woody, I like to use a planer, like in a carpentry shop, or slice it with a knife very thinly, and then do a 1 to 5 at 95% alcohol, and let that sit for 2 weeks. Shake it daily. Then you take that mark out, that is the mushrooms that are saturated with alcohol, squeeze that all out well, and put the alcohol aside. And then you take those pieces of mushroom and you put them 1 to 20, 1 part by weight, 20 parts by volume of water, and put it on the stove and decoct very slowly down to about half. So go from 20 parts down to about 10. And then take that from the heat, remove it, squeeze it well, and then combine the water and alcohol solvents together, and you end up with a reishi formula, or any polypore really, of about 35% alcohol that is very efficacious.
If you were to compare, you've written the book, The Fungal Pharmacy.
Yes.
If you were to compare the power of the mushroom versus the power of pharmaceuticals, which is better?
Well, let's put it this way. Which causes less side effects? The evidence shows that some pharmaceuticals, just generally in North America, around 200,000 people a year die from taking pharmaceuticals as directed. And there hasn't been any mushroom deaths that I know of in the last 10 years, except for those who are choosing to eat some edible mushrooms that were mistaken. And those are far and few between, but people do. I mean, there is a rule, and if you can't name the mushroom, you shouldn't be picking it and eating it. So, but as far as medicinal side effects, there's only a few contraindications with some of them. For example, reishi really shouldn't be taken at the same time as ACE inhibitors, which are for cardiovascular events. And shiitake, some people get a dermatitis if they eat them raw, which you shouldn't, by the way, eat any mushrooms raw, really. And, turkey tail over time, one of the great medicinal mushrooms, some people find a darkening of their nails that disappears after they stop the mushroom extract for a while. So there are some contraindications. Morels should be very carefully stayed away from by people who tend to have a a condition called favaism. That is a kind of a pernicious anemia associated with Mediterranean peoples. They have a particular genetic code that causes morels to be a problem for them. But, by and large, not many problems.
How about magic mushrooms? That's obviously one of your gateway drugs. Usually you start with pot and then you work your way up to a magic mushroom.
Well, I would say this, that the evidence has showed that, of course, young people, tend to treat sometimes their mind and their body like an amusement park, and instead of it being a temple, which it is. And so philosophies and related mushrooms like that are very important entheogenics for helping people to become into their true spiritual nature. And so they have a place to play. They have a role to play. It's too bad that our society looks at things like that as illegal or bad, or they kind of put titles on it.
Are there medicinal qualities to magic mushrooms?
Yes. Maggie Klingquist, she'd be a great interview for you. She works out of Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, and they've done a number of very interesting clinical trials with magic mushrooms. I'll cite one, but they've been doing a number with different addictions, tobacco addictions, alcohol addictions, post-traumatic, depression, anxiety. They took 30 individuals who had stage 4 cancers, which is quite serious, and they all ingested 200 milligrams of a synthetic psilocin, which is, instead of taking the mushroom itself, they took the active ingredient, and they supervised them, and they all had an experience for the day. And a year later, they did a re-interview with them, and all 30 were living, which was amazing within itself. But many of them said that one event was one of the most incredible experiences of their lives, that it helped them reconnect with that sense of self and spirit. That search that everyone is always after for finding that part of themselves. Why are we here? All of those kind of questions. So absolutely a very important medicine.
But there must be a fear involved, the fear of having a bad trip. You can have bad trips on mushrooms, right?
Well, some people do, yeah, apparently. And I think the old shamanic journeys where you had supervised and where you were supervised in your journey by people who have been there before is probably the more ideal situation with regards to these entheogens than it is to just people just taking a drug as an escape. I mean, there's quite a difference.
You're an ID expert.
Well, I wouldn't say that. I would say
wow.
Britt Barnyard thinks I am, so I guess that's good enough, I guess.
Right, and we had Britt on the show.
Yeah, excellent show, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Well, there must be an easy way to determine if a mushroom is poisonous. I'm sure you would know just by looking at them if they're edible or not, but how would a novice know?
You don't. You have to name it to species. Even within particular genus, one mushroom may well be edible and another not. And as I say, unless you can name it, you shouldn't eat it. And there is no hard and fast rule. That's the one thing about mushrooms, as opposed to plants. They are much more difficult to actually ID. It takes a long time. My suggestion for anyone who's interested in this fascinating area is to go out with people who are experts and learn. Maybe you learn 5 or 6 mushrooms a year, and after a dozen years you have a pretty good repertoire. And if you're only interested in edibles, that's fine, but you should know the few very poisonous mushrooms that are in your area. For example, the destroying angel has moved into the Vancouver area. People should know that. And
the destroying angel will kill you.
Oh, absolutely. You will, initially be very ill, and about 8 hours later, after, some purging and whatnot, you'll go, oh, phew, I escaped that. And then about 3 days later, you'll die of kidney and liver failure. In excruciating pain, too. So, absolutely. And when it's a small button, it looks exactly, to many people at first glance who don't pay attention, because they don't look for the vulva under the ground, it could look just like a button mushroom, just like a regular agaric. Care is definitely needed.
You're also a herbologist. Comparing the two sciences, which is more beneficial, if I could ask that?
Well, I think they're both beneficial. That's a great question. I actually hope that I have been part of, in some small way, of bringing medicinal mushrooms into the herbal world. I mean, they have been utilized by natural practitioners for thousands of years. So whenever, they have plants or, the whole kingdom of plants, it was only in the 70s that actually fungi were moved out of the plant kingdom and actually have their own kingdom now. So for herbalists, basically the use of plants or fungi are kind of interspersed now, and you'll often see in many of the newer publications by herbalists and naturopaths that they've accepted medicinal mushrooms into the repertoire.
Well, I've seen here in Vancouver, we're pretty new age, and there's the mushroom stores popping up that are exclusively selling mushroom health products.
Yeah.
Of course, they've been selling these things in Chinatown for decades, right?
Yeah. I think there's a new level of awareness going on, and certainly the idea of, number one, all mushrooms should be grown organically, of course, both for edibility and for medicinal. That always wasn't the case. Many of the the dried specimens that were sold in certain, early Chinese herbal stores were heavily sulfated, fungicided, etc., and dead by the time they got here. So I think there is a growing awareness that, you want good quality. And, both for edibility and medicinal, I really find it exciting that there's new stores opening up.
So as the world gets more polluted, the quality of our medicines are going up?
Well, I think those who are paying attention are seeking out and doing the best they can by buying as locally and organically as they can just about everything. I mean, that's the reality of today.
Could a child or should a child take reishi mushroom, for example, for any medicinal benefit?
I really don't like to treat any child with any herbals under 2 years of old, and preferably anybody under 6. I'm very cautious in clinical practice, unless you have somebody who specializes in pediatrics on a natural level. So the answer, quick and dirty, is probably under 2 years old, no.
Under 2 years old, no. Under 6, not recommended.
With caution. And, there would have to be other things, I think, tried first before you would go that route. Not that there's a problem. It's just that, like with anything that is added into a new diet, there needs to be caution, paid attention. And I would advise parents who are thinking of this to go to someone who's an expert and have them monitor and give dosages and things of that nature.
Your book, The Fungal Pharmacy, has a heck of a lot more mushrooms than just the reishi mushroom, yet it's probably the most popular, well-known one. Are really any mushrooms that aren't poisonous, are they medicinal to some extent? Or are some completely benign and non-beneficial whatsoever?
Well, they guesstimate there's around 1.4 million species of mushrooms, fungi in the world, and of those, probably about 14,000 have been named, or 140,000 named, and then about maybe 500 to 600 now, it's growing a little bit, actually have proven medicinal properties either in vivo or in human trials. And so the repertoire is spreading, and it will probably only expand as more and more people are looking at some of the incredible possibilities that mushrooms have for health and well-being.
Well, and the marketability of these things. They're looking for the next big product.
Well, that's always the case, and of course, we have to always be careful. That's why I've never aligned myself with any particular company, whether herbal or mushroom, that you have to keep some credibility as an educator to not pick and choose winners. And So there's always going to be that aspect. And in a free capitalist system, people can put any kind of product they care to on the market, and so the consumer has to be wary.
Is it responsible for someone to come off the street, go into a store, talk to someone for 2 minutes about their problem, and then be sold the $30 bottle of pills, or whatever the Reishi may come in, or whatever it might be?
Well, I'd just say that that's going on every day in pharmacies and health food stores. That is going on.
Is it responsible, though?
No. Yeah. I mean, really, the way we've left it, it is up to the consumer to educate themselves. Where are they going to get and find good information? Part of the reason I wrote this book is to steer people clear of claims that are not valid, but is also to articulate when there have been human clinical trials that, hey, there's benefit for people who are suffering some of the chronic diseases that we are suffering today, the diabetes, the cancers, the different kind of chronic autoimmune conditions, and mushrooms fit very well into that world. I mean, there's no drug out there that both modulates the immune system and reduces inflammation like Reishi. There is nothing. And so it is a valuable medicine. People need to educate themselves about how to use it properly, but yes, it's a great medicine.
If you were diagnosed with cancer and you could take the pharmaceutical approach or the herbology approach, I can only assume you would take the herbology approach, or would you take combinations of the two? Personally speaking, I would steer clear. I mean, there are some serious side effects to chemotherapy and certainly to radiation. Having said that, I think everyone has to make up their mind depending on what their philosophic orientation is and how they feel and you have to take into account family members. It's a very stressful time. What I would like to see actually in many oncology centers around Canada for sure is that there would be databases of information so that oncologists and patients alike could, for example, if you chose to take chemotherapy, recognize that taking turkey tail at the same time or taking reishi at the same time or astragalus root, which is an herb, may actually be very beneficial to ameliorate the side effects of the chemo so that the white blood cell count doesn't go too low and people can recover more easily. And so, I'm talking about the integrative kind of approaches. With the popularity of these things increasing, is there a risk that mushrooms may become endangered?
Well, I am concerned about chaga in particular. That chaga, wild harvested, is totally out of control. And I've seen people send me prideful pictures of huge mounds of chaga they've harvested. And the reality is that, only about 1 in 20,000 birch trees contain a chaga, a sterile conch. And, the fruiting of that particular species of mushroom is about, at the very end of the tree's life, about 2 days, there's small fruiting bodies, maybe a dozen people in the world have ever seen it, and then those spores go in to inoculate another tree. Well, if you take all the chaga in the area, there will be no more chaga. And so I am kind of on a bandwagon with regards to sustainable harvest of chaga, yes.
As for the other mushrooms, they're sustainable?
Well, reishi's grown now. Many of these turkey tail, maitake, some of the great medicinal mushrooms are all cultivated in the controlled conditions, either in huge factories or, solid fermentation or under controlled conditions. And so, I don't know when the last time anybody actually found a reishi that was growing in the wild from, say, parts of Asia. But fortunately, we have Ganoderma sugae right all over the forests in British Columbia. So, no, I don't think there's any present danger right at the moment, no.
What's the difference between a mushroom and a toadstool?
Probably degree of whether you're British or not, and you're kind of a mycophobe, fungal phobe. Toadstool's an old name for, there's just like there's kickers and there's pickers out there. And I would say the kicker is kind of like toadstool as a term. It really doesn't mean anything.
If I'm suffering from arthritis, what would you prescribe?
Well, I can't prescribe. I'm not a medical doctor, but you might have your herbalist might recommend for arthritis. I think some of the great ones is, as I mentioned, Reishi is a great choice, even for rheumatoid arthritis, which is an autoimmune response in the body. If the arthritis flares, the rheumatoid part where there's tissue destruction is flaring, it will bring down that inflammation. If the immune system is deficient, it will actually bring up and enhance immune function so that it's optimal. So as I mentioned, there's very few things out there that do that.
I have a question from one of the audience members, Dan Miller. He goes to say here, occasionally I get a bag of desiccated shiitake from China. I am uncertain of this fungi's capacity to sequester metals, and so I'm a little bit reticent, especially given the obscurity of China's ecological pollution and also the cultivation practices. What is the contaminant potential of Chinese cultivated mushrooms?
Huge. I don't touch any of them. Enough said. I mean, a couple of years ago, I suggested to the Canadian Food Inspection Agency that they not allow garlic to be sold into grocery stores in Canada due to the high levels of heavy metals that are sequestered in the oils of garlic. And of course, you ever go to superstore, you see how cheap they are compared to an organic garlic clove bulb, and they won't do anything. And so it's up to consumers to recognize that that is an incredibly polluted country, and there are good shiitakes being grown. I can go down to my corner store right here, like 2 blocks away from me, a little organic grocery store, and they have organic shiitakes fresh anytime I want them. Or grow your own. I live in a little condo in the middle of Edmonton, and I grew shiitakes right on my deck last summer. Delicious.
Can you grow mushrooms all year round?
Yeah, sure, in the right climate. If I lived out in Lotus Land like you, I could do it all year round, sure. Yeah.
Yes.
In fact, I come out a couple of times a year. I was very fortunate. I go to an herbal college, Pacific Rim College in Victoria, and give a couple of courses a year on medicinal mushrooms. And we do a classroom for the first day, and the second day we go out into the woods and identify and look at and et cetera. And I always love that. I mean, you guys have just such a bounty of beautiful medicinal mushrooms.
Yes, we do. But for the rest of the world, unfortunately, they have to purchase them.
That's right. And so, organic does mean something. You can purchase, in our stores here, I can get there's about, oysters, gnocchis, all the different agaricus are all fresh and organic. And so, yeah, it's really good. And then in season, we can often get the well-crafted chanterelles and the trumpets and things like that. So, yeah, it's actually getting much, much better over time.
People are becoming less fungi-phobic, as you put it.
Well, they're not only delicious, but, they're nutritious. And we have, in our town, we have people at farmers markets who fly in mushrooms from all over the world for sales. It's a growing industry, there's no question.
Now, mushrooms are high in purines, as any gout sufferer will know. Purines are also found in oysters and spinach. Can gout sufferers eat mushrooms, or should they avoid them?
That's a great question. Yes, they can in moderation. They're moderately rich in purines. The worst offenders, of course, are things like organ meats. People who are eating their sandwich meats that are from different parts of animals' organs are the worst for gout, and alcohols of certain types. One thing that a friend of mine, his mother suffered greatly with gout, and he found that a foot bath with Ganoderma applanatum, that is the artist conch, relieved her pain almost immediately. So there is reason to believe that some medicinal mushrooms actually are beneficial for gout.
We've all heard of Monsanto. They're, the most evil company in the world. producing GMO products. Do you think they'll ever have GMO mushrooms?
Oh, they're working on GMO mushrooms. Absolutely. There are people around the world who are looking at inserting different kinds of medicines into what we would generally consider to be toxic fungi. They're looking at manufacturing particularly types of cyclic peptides. This is pharmaceutical companies, of course. And so, yeah, I can see that possibly coming down the road.
And would that destroy the organic sector?
No, I don't think so. I think that the organic sector, who have pretty much made their minds up on GMOs and are not persuaded by the media associated with GMOs. I mean, let's face it, it's still unbelievable that in this country people don't have a choice to whether or not they want to choose a GMO product. The government is so remiss they can't even label it. They're so scared to. So, yeah, I think there's an issue there.
But they're labeling things organic, so you know from buying the organic product that you're not getting GMO.
Well, that's what we hope. Absolutely, that's my hope, yeah.
I'm not sure I understand this question, but I'm hoping you will. It's an audience question. What does Robert think of the zombie fungus and the potential that the body's fungal flora contributes to thoughts and actions?
I'm not sure what is meant by the zombie fungus, but just generally speaking, the intestinal microbial flora of all of us is an area that's really being explored much more in the last decade. And the disruption of that has created a plethora of health problems. There are certain bacteria that gain a foothold in people's intestines due to drugs or antibiotics or things like birth control pills, etc., and they disrupt normal flora in the gut, allowing opportunistic fungi to take over, and of course they do affect the brain. The actual release of toxins by these bacteria and fungi can cause serious, serious problems. But I don't know what the zombie fungus is. I haven't heard that term before, so...
Why are people so fungi phobic?
Well, I think
they're not scared about plants, and plants are in fact kind of more dangerous if you think about it.
Well, it's very interesting that I think it's usually out of the British blood, out of England. If you look at France and Germany and Eastern Europe, they love their mushrooms. If you look at the Orient, they love their mushrooms, and so it generally is those who have some British ancestry in them that. I don't know about yourself, but when I was a kid, the only mushrooms we could get were these slimy little things in a can, that I didn't even like when Mom put it on a pizza, So we weren't really exposed to the joys of mushrooms like some people were.
Money's mushrooms makes meals marvelous, right?
That's it. Yeah. And so if you haven't gone out with your parents picking mushrooms, then probably there's more likelihood that you were told not to pick them or something,
Can mushrooms help with diabetes? I can't imagine they could, but I'll ask the question.
Oh, absolutely can. I mean, there's clinical proof they do. Maitake, or hen of the woods, has shown in several clinical trials to be very efficacious for type 2 diabetes, and not only helping to lower blood sugars, but to actually help increase efficacy in those individuals who are insulin resistant. There's a whole swack of diabetes patients in North America, overweight, hypertension, high blood sugar, high blood pressure, who they're producing enough insulin, but it's no longer working efficiently, and they're not getting blood sugar into their cells. And maitake has been shown to be able to help reverse that trend.
And you can find this in the stores as well?
Well, yeah. Have you ever eaten hen of the woods or maitake? It generally grows at the base of oaks. I know you have some oaks out your way, but in some parts of eastern North America, they're all over the place, and I've picked them. But they also sell them commercially. You can get them at your farmer's market as a fresh mushroom. You can get extracts from your health food store that are specifically one called maitake. I think it's called SX for Syndrome X, and it is a protein sugar molecule derived from maitake that's specifically for that issue.
Well, I've been taking turkey tail, actually. I've been harvesting it here and making a tea out of it.
Great. Oh, I love turkey tail. Absolutely.
It tastes good, actually. It has anise flavor. Would that be correct?
I think that would, it's subtly that way. Yeah, absolutely, yes.
How long should it take when you start taking these medicinal mushrooms to start seeing actual health effects?
Well, I guess it depends what you're looking at. If you're looking at it for chronic conditions, which often that's when people finally, go to turkey tail. I mean, turkey tail is the go-to now for breast cancer based on phase 3 trials at Bastyr College in Seattle. And turkey tail has been widely used and is actually paid for by the healthcare system in Japan for people who have undergone various cancer surgeries. So it's well known and well appreciated. And you can get it as an extract, or you can just make your own. It's not really, I would call, edible. Christopher Hobbs says that you can chew it when it's very young as a type of a mushroom-flavored bubble gum, and I've tried that, but it's okay. But it's not something I do on a regular basis. But take it and make it into tea. Just make sure that you slowly decoct it for a while. Just pouring hot water on turkey tail will not do the job.
Well, what's the chemical inside that is actually beneficial?
Well, there is no one chemical. There's a whole swack of very complex polysaccharides and oligosaccharides that make turkey tail a very interesting compound. And in the world of medicinal mushrooms, there's 2 different types. There's a PSK that's made out of Japan and a PSP from China, and they're both different polysaccharide peptides that are attached to proteins, and they both have very complex chemistry that cannot be duplicated by pharmacy, and thank God they can't.
But the pharmaceutical industry would consider these things to be not clinically proven.
Well, they have an agenda. Let's face it.
So you feel that there is a conspiracy. Why can't they just get on the money train and start creating these products themselves?
Well, the reality is, in the pharmaceutical world, you really want something that has a patent that nobody else can come after that for a period of time. And it is impossible to patent natural products. I've been trying to get a trial here at the University of Alberta. I would like to replicate a small trial done in Japan on Hericium, the lion's mane mushroom, the big one that looks like a coral. That particular mushroom has been shown in small trials to be very efficacious for reducing the decline of mental acuity in senile dementia and Alzheimer's. So I would like to replicate that trial in North America, even in a small group, just because we have no cure for Alzheimer's. And so it would be nice to look for things that would assist people's general health. We don't always have to look to pharmaceuticals. In fact, I think we've been remiss by allowing pharmaceuticals to control the entire drug production in North America. And now when we need new antibiotics, there aren't any. And they're not investing in them either. And so, there you go.
Hospices, as well, as I understand, are starting to use magic mushrooms to help the patients cope with their own mortality.
Yeah, I know, exactly. Very good. And again, if you look at some of the work that's been done out of Johns Hopkins, you'll see where they're going.
Which is really very prominent.
Well, well, as I say, it's always great when politics gets out of the way of good science.
Well, the last thing a politician is a scientist.
We know that.
The Fungal Pharmacy is considered to be the book on medicinal mushrooms for this area. It's really good. I love the book. And it's filled with historical anecdotes, and I think anybody could read it. It's fairly accessible.
Yeah, I'm hoping sometime. I'm waiting for an invite from the Vancouver Mycological Society to come out and share an evening on the topic with them one of these years, so that would be nice.
Yeah, I was at the Vancouver Mycological Society's big summer show. There were about 500-600 people there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I was expecting to go into a room with like 10 old ladies or something, right? It was anything but.
Well, you know what? It's very exciting. Have you heard of the group Radical Mycology?
Yes, I have. I've seen them on Facebook.
Yeah, they are an amazing group of young people who are highly educated, really intently excited about using mushrooms for not only medicines and health, but also for remediating some of the polluted parts of our planet. And so I'm very excited about the direction that things are going and the number of young people that are increasingly excited about mycology. Because I'm not a mycologist, really. I'm an amateur at best, but most of the great discoveries have been done by amateurs.
One last audience question. Could fungi save us from the next great extinction as they have in the past?
I believe they could. I believe that some of the groundbreaking work that's being done around the planet, including Paul Stamets out of Washington State, the remediation of toxins in our environment, the replacing of toxic plastics, not only to replace them, which you're doing with Ecovite is doing with oyster mushroom containers, but degrading plastic and eating it up and cleaning up petroleum areas like the oil sands that are in northern Alberta. So I'm very excited about the future of mushrooms, and I would say yes, that they are one of the things that is going to make the difference on the planet.
You mentioned Paul Stamets. He's recommended your book, by the way. The Fungal Pharmacy is a great book for anyone interested in the medicinal properties of mushrooms. In this rapidly developing field, I am delighted to recommend this book to both amateurs and professionals. Robert Rogers has made a significant contribution, highly recommended. So, and he's kind of the man right now, isn't he?
He is the man, and he was a great inspiration for me with regards to, opening my eyes to this, because, you know, I'd been an herbalist for about 30 years before I actually re-looked at mushrooms, and so I thank him for that. And I also really believe that he's on to something that will be followed up by a whole generation or two that will actually make a huge difference to this planet.
You have some websites out there. I know you and your wife are running some businesses. Tell me about this.
Well, we have www.selfhealdistributing.com. That is our major website, and you can see on there, you can see some of my publications, you can see some of the work that we do. We distribute flower essences and essential oils in Canada, and that's kind of like, you know, pays the basic home bills. But a lot of the work I do actually involves research and writing. We have a new institute just last week was announced finally in Edmonton called the Integrative Research Institute, and at the University of Alberta, and bringing together 100-some different people from different fields to actually look at some of the things that have been looking at that Harvard has been doing for 20 years. But it's still exciting to see that we're moving in that direction, and I hope to be part of that.
The separation of the sciences bothers me.
Very much.
You can't isolate one science from another. There needs to be a more holistic view of science.
Exactly.
You look at Aristotle, he studied everything. It wasn't like he was a specialist in one thing.
Yeah, I believe that, you know, the turf management that goes on in all departments and universities has been a real impediment to progress. That people believe that they know one little thing and they hold on to that and they want to share, and it's sort of like the little sandbox, you know, I mean, really. And so it's time to get beyond that, and nice to see finally.
Yeah, no doubt, and it's not just at the Wild Rose type colleges or whatnot. It's now the major players.
It's the universities and colleges around North America that are recognizing they have huge pools of talent. What if these people, you know, sat down together, had a beer together, and looked at ideas that, you know, like the two people who came together years ago and had a beer together at some conference, and they came up with the epigenetic programming, that your genes, your grandmother's patterns show up on your genes, and that's influencing how you experience life and feel on a cellular level. So exciting. I mean, yeah, absolutely, to get brilliant people together is always fun.
Well, this is what Mensa was supposed to be, you know, getting high IQ groups together to solve problems. And then it just became a smart person's club.
Exactly. So you have a high IQ, okay, that's good. But if you really want to serve, which all of us, you know, really on some level really want to do to make this planet a better place, then you have to leave your ego hat at the door and work together to create things that really work for all of humankind.
How can the audience get in touch with you if they want to learn more about you and maybe, you know, reach out to you?
Well, they can go to the website I mentioned, the Self-Heal Distributing. I also have a Facebook page called the Fungal Pharmacy, where I post pictures occasionally that people can, you know, I kind of let people know what's going on in my world in terms of mycology and what I'm experiencing, and share pictures, and they can keep in touch with me that way. And I'm pretty accessible. If you punch my full name in, Robert Dale Rogers, like on Amazon.com, you'll see all the titles of books that are out there available to people to order through Amazon. So they might find something that interests them.
Robert, what a good time. Thank you so much for your appearance on the show today. I'd love to chat again. It's been an honor.
Well, thank you, Russell. You're a great interview, and thank you very much for the opportunity to share with people.